Hey coders, it's Derek from the Derek Codes YouTube channel, and today I wanted to build off of a recent video I did. It's called How to Build an API. This is going to be part 2. We're going to learn all about how to send emails in Laravel using what they call markdown. Now, full disclaimer, if you haven't already watched part 1 of the series, go ahead and check that out. It'll bring you up to speed with everything that we're going to be doing today. And then also, I have another video out there on what is Markdown. If you're not already comfortable with what Markdown is and the syntax and all the ways it can benefit you to build websites and documents and emails and things like that, go ahead and check that out as well. So let's go ahead and dive right in. All right, now before we actually get into any code, I wanted to show you Laravel documentation for how to send mail. Really important, always have your documentation up and ready to use whenever you're gonna be doing something. Don't ever feel weird about it. I've been coding for years and years and years. I still reference documentation all the time. So don't ever feel weird about having to check something out on documentation, right? So what we're gonna do today is first we have to choose who is going to send your email, which is actually a whole separate topic that I'm gonna branch into in a separate video. Right now, the biggest thing is that to know is that we're gonna be using what they call Mailtrap. Mailtrap.io, and again, I will put all the links to every site that I reference in the description of the video, so you can just click on those. It's a free service out there that you can sign up for, and it'll send an email to an inbox that you have, but it actually doesn't send it like out into the wild, basically. It's gonna be a kind of a controlled sandbox developer type email inbox where it's just using an API to send this message. You can get the email, see it, but it's actually not sending it out to the public world, basically. So it's a pretty cool thing, and it's free, and it's super fast too. You don't have to wait for the email to show up in your inbox. It's instant because it's using an API. So really cool. That's what we're going to be using. The next thing we're going to do is build up the Mailable object in Laravel, build up the markdown. It kind of sounded funny, build up the markdown, but we're going to be doing it in Laravel. So let's dive in. And we're updating the controller to actually send out the email, and then we're going to check our Mailtrap inbox to see if we got the mail. So let's do it. Go ahead and get signed up to Mailtrap. I'm going to actually just go ahead and log into my account that I already have. I use GitHub to authenticate. You can actually use your email address and register too. You have your account set up. The interface is pretty straightforward. There's a lot of different settings in here, but basically it's just an inbox on your left and then your messages on the right. Since we don't have any mail set up, it'll actually give you your configuration settings, your username and password, so you can actually send mail to this inbox. So we're actually going to choose Laravel from this drop down here, and it'll actually give us the end file information we need. Now, don't feel like I'm being insecure. I did already change this password, so they won't be able to be used anymore, but thanks for thinking of me. Let me go in here into our end file and update this. Now we're actually setting up our end file to use, it looks like an SMTP server. It's really just an API for it to actually deliver these messages instantly, so it's really, really cool. What we should probably do at this time too is change the from address. So when we send a message, we want it to come from Derek at derekcodes.io. And the from name, we use our app name. We should probably go see, our app name is Derek Codes API. So that's legit, that's fine, right? So the next thing that we're gonna wanna do is actually create the mailable object that the Laravel mail facade will use to send the data we need to our blade template in the end. So let's jump over to terminal. We're gonna use, clear this up here. We're gonna use Artisan to actually create this mailable object. So we're gonna PHP artisan make mail. We're gonna call it contact form. And these are where these attributes come in really handy, because what this is gonna do is create a normal mailable object for you and create a normal blade template for you that's just HTML based. So unless you have a kick butt designer, or maybe you're an awesome designer yourself, you can even go this route to create your own. But what we're gonna do is actually use Markdown. So I do this -- markdown attribute at the end here. Go ahead and hit return.
it's going to create our mailable object and create our blade template for us as well. All right, so that was created successfully. Let's jump over to our editor here and go over to app, mail, refresh my folder here. Here's my contact form, mailable object. It's pretty basic so far. This is a standard structure. And you can see though with that -- markdown attribute that we used, it actually is referencing this mail blade template down here that it created as an example for us, and it's referencing it as markdown. So whatever you put in there, it's going to interpret it as markdown. What we want to do from here is go over to our contact controller and find the store method, because when someone actually fills out the form or we're storing that data, that's actually when we want to send the email to ourselves letting us know, right? So from here, so here's our store method. We're saving it and returning some data. This will be the perfect spot to actually send out the email. Send email. What we're going to do is use Laravel's mail facade to send an email to derek@derekcodes.io. And whatever you put in here right now using Mailtrap, it doesn't matter. You could put bill@gates.com. Whatever you want to do, mark@zuckerberg.net. It's not going to go there. It's going to go to our Mailtrap account that we set up. So you can put whatever you want here. It's not going to go there. But just for fun, I'm putting my real email address in, right? All right, so we're going to define the two, and we're going to send, what are we going to send? A new contact form object. So that contact form object that we're initializing here and that we're sending to the mail facade is the mailable object that we just defined, right? And now what we're going to do is go to the top. Since we're referencing these variables like mail and contact form, we actually have to use what they call namespace to identify the location of where these objects actually live, right? So we're going to go up to the top. We're going to add these use statements. We're going to say use illuminate, if I could spell, illuminate support facades mail. And then we're going to say use app mail contact form. Awesome. So we're using the mail facade to actually send the mail messages. We're using our contact form object that we created to actually deliver the markdown. I think that looks pretty good. Now again, I use Insomnia to send my request to an API. Some people use Postman. You know, you can use whatever you want. This is a nifty, handy tool here. So I'm actually going to go, now that I have this up, I'm going to refresh it. It's going to submit it. It went through. So let's go back to our browser and go to Mailtrap. Oh, look at that. Our email already came through. Contact form from Derek Codes API, Derek Codes to Derek Codes. And here's our basic email that Laravel generated for us. And it's markdown, so but look how beautiful it is. And cool thing about Mailtrap here, you can just check the responsiveness of it. So you can actually see what it looked like on a phone or a tablet. And it's a really simple email, but as you can see, it's completely responsive. And we didn't have to code any of that. So Markdown is the way to go. I am a huge, huge fan. But this is not the data that we want to send, right? So let's get started on building out our mailable object to pass in some data to our Markdown. Back over to our code editor, and we are going to pass the contact form mailable object the contact model, this database row that we created, right? So we're going to pass that in. Now go back over to your mailable object, and in our constructor that's being initialized, you know, when you instantiate that object, we're going to put in app. Now we use namespace, right? So we'll call it contact. And we'll say use app model contact. Cool. And we're going to say this contact equals the contact that we're passing in. Now this is something to keep note of here. This is a local variable that we're creating here. So we'd use, normally you'd use like a private variable called contact, right? The problem is our markdown form is not part of that object. It's an outside entity that's referencing variables in this object, right? So you can't actually make it private. It won't be able to access the variables. So you actually have to make these variables, whatever you want to reference in the markdown or in the HTML email that you're generating, you need to make those public. So this is the contact object. We're setting it from the contact object that's passed in. And I think we should probably change our subject line. And this is where you would do that as well. Contact form submission. Looks good. All right, cool. So now we're passing in, well, we changed our subject line because I'm crafty. And we're also passing in our contact object, our contact model into our contact form here so that we can actually reference it in our markdown, if that makes sense. So just to recapitulate really quickly, here's our controller where we're sending out the email. We're passing in the contact model, so the name, email, phone, the comments, things like that, whatever's on that database row, we're passing it into this Mailable object. Go over to this Mailable object, it's being passed in, we're setting it to a public variable in the object, and then we're sending the email. Now, over in the email, we want to reference those, right? So we should probably delete this button. We don't need a button. We'll say this is a contact form. There was a new form submission. Again, the cool thing about Markdown is that this is an H1 tag. This is a new paragraph. This is a new paragraph. You don't actually have to put a lot of that code in there. Breaks you do, as you can see here. If you just want to go down one line, you put in a BR there. There's some basic HTML to break to the new line, but when you can double space like you have right here, as you can see, that's creating a whole new paragraph. So it's pretty cool. We'll check it out in just a second. So make this really easy. We'll say name. We'll add our curly handlebars here, and we'll say contact to reference that object. Name. And I'm always a proponent for having kind of a failover. I come from the Swift world. When you're building mobile apps, you never have forced references to variables. You always have optionals, basically. So even though we always want this to show up, especially when we spell contact correctly, what if for someday it's not there, right? We don't want the whole thing to blow up and we don't get the email because somebody filled out our form, right? So we add double question mark and then put a blank right here. So if this thing, for whatever exists, this variable is not on this object, it's not gonna fail, it's not gonna blow up, it's just to return an empty string. So I'm gonna copy and paste all these different lines here. Ooh, add some BRs, right? Because it's not gonna break. And we'll add email. And phone. I think, was it comment? I think was the last one we wanted to add. Cool. I think that looks pretty good. All right, now you'll see when I went over here to Insomnia and I posted a new contact form entry, I got a fatal error, I got a server error, which again, nothing to be ashamed of. We're coding, right? There could be small syntax error. We need to find out what's going on. So we can go to our terminal and you can use the Laravel log, which is at storage logs laravel.log, because we have debugging turned off in our end file because we actually have this project up on the web because we don't want anybody to see anything that what we're doing. So this log entry shows that our contact form mailable object is referencing an app model contact model, and it needs to be referencing app models contact. So you can hear the difference there, what I just said. App model contact versus app models contact.
when you create a model, it's in a folder called models, not model. So I made a mistype there. So let's go back over to our editor. We have our Mailable object here. Here's our contact model we're passing in. What's going on? Here, my namespace is wrong. I type app model contact. So let's make it app models, save that, and let's try it again. Go ahead and refresh. Beautiful. Now it goes through. Again, nothing to be ashamed of. Happens to everybody. All right, now let's jump over to our browser. There it is. Mailtrap's got our new subject line, contact form submission that I updated. That looks awesome. And look at this beautiful email here. There's no phone submitted, so it didn't blow up. It just didn't put anything in there. Other thing we could do, jump over to Nova here really quick. My editor. Instead of a blank, because we made the phone an optional field, so we'll supposed to put like NA in there. Something like that, right? Go ahead and submit another request just for fun so we can see it. And there it is. It says NA. So this is awesome. The other thing that we probably want to do here is make this email clickable. And again, Markdown makes that super, super easy. Love Markdown. Actually, I'm going to copy this here. And we're going to use our Markdown syntax. So the first here, brackets here, this is what the name is going to be, what you're going to be able to click on. So it's going to be the email address, right? Or you could put like the guy's email, whatever you want. And then this is the actual href. So this is going to be a mail to this email address. So let's go ahead and save that. You could do the same thing with the phone. This you could just kind of click to call. But if you're pulling it up on your smartphone, you're probably able to click it anyway. But this is just a quick example. Let's go back over and send another request. Go over to Mailtrap. And there it is. Now it's a nice formatted link. Markdown is so cool. I love it. So the last thing that I wanted to do was show you how to, if you want to get a little crazier, export Laravel's Markdown HTML and actually modify it yourself. Because if you don't want this form to look just like this, let's say you want your logo up here, there is a way to do that. You can change that pretty easily. And so let me go ahead and show you how you actually do that. So you're going to actually go to Artisan on the command line again. Clear this out of the way here. It's going to be PHP Artisan space vendor publish. And what do you want to publish? The tag of Laravel mail. I think that looks right. Awesome. So it's actually saying that it's copying from the vendor folder, which is where the composer scripts that we use to install Laravel from Git actually copied that over to a resources file folder structure that we have access to. So let's go over to Nova here, or wherever your editor is, and go to resources views vendor mail. All right, so let's go back to the root directory here. Go to resources views vendor mail HTML is what we're looking for. And the header will probably be good enough for us. So what this is showing is if you don't actually have a name set up in your end file, it actually uses the Laravel logo, which is kind of fun. Otherwise, it'll use your name. Let's change this, though, to be our logo. What we're going to do here is change their logo to ours. And we're going to use our handlebars here to reference an asset. And we're going to have an asset. It's going to be in the public folder off the root directory of Laravel. And I already created an images folder. I don't even remember the name of the image, to be honest. So let me go back here to my root directory. My public folder. I created a folder called images. And there's my derekcodes.png. Awesome. Now their logo is probably not the same size as ours, so it's probably going to look wonky, but let's go ahead and give it a try to see what it looks like in Mailtrap. Whoa, there's the logo. That's awesome, but it definitely doesn't look like how we want it, right? So great thing is you can modify the CSS too. So let's go back over to Nova. or again, whatever editor you're using. So I'm going to go to Resources, Views, Vendor, Mail, HTML, and go to Themes and Default CSS. Let's search for logo. Here it is. Max height 75. I'm just going to make the height auto and give mine a width of 175 pixels. I don't know if that's going to be big enough, but we're going to find out. Let's go ahead and see it again. Go back over to Mailtrap. Hey, that looks great. That's perfect. That's awesome. Cool. Well, as you can see, you can pretty much change anything in these templates. Really, the sky's the limit. You could change the background color. You could add a border to it. Really, the sky's the limit. Obviously, you could do whatever you want. You can buttons down there, a signature, you know, whatever you have. You can modify this footer. Say, hey, this is not a spam email. You filled out our form, and we sent this to you. That's the reason you got it. So the sky's the limit now that you can customize your emails in Laravel using Markdown. Thank you so much for watching this episode. I hope you liked it. Be sure to comment below with any questions you may have, ideas for my next video, or anything else that's on your mind. Also, like and subscribe and click the bell icon to get alerted of my next episode. Until next time, keep coding, everyone.